Mad Rockweek Serial, Chapter 9, John's Piece of Madness. John got home late. It had taken 4 hours to help Lerner assemble the packets for the morning, the kind of work that felt important while you were doing it and hollow the second you stopped. Together they'd built the most complete picture of Garrison Green anyone had ever bothered to assemble. Pages, timelines, photographs, rumors elevated to footnotes. John hoped it'd be enough. He unlocked the door and stepped into the quiet of his 3-bedroom house, a quiet so complete it felt staged, the kind you noticed only after you've lived without it. His son's shoes were gone from the entryway. The backpack hook was empty. No cartoons murmured from the TV. Jackson was almost 8. That number stuck with him lately. After so many arguments and one final blow-up, Helen had taken Jackson to Florida, her parents' place. Sunlight, distance, somewhere Garrison Green did not exist. The relief set badly in John's chest. They were safe. He wasn't with them. A tear leaked from his left eye before he could stop it. He wiped it away angrily. He wanted to say goodbye. Helen hadn't waited. She'd been too angry. She could be a real bitch sometimes. John paced the house room to room like he was checking for intruders who were already gone. He tried to think about Garrison, tried to think about work, but the silence kept interrupting him, breaking his thoughts apart like brittle glass. Eventually, exhaustion won. He collapsed onto the couch and slipped under. The dream was the same one he'd had for over 2 years, only now it felt different, heavier. John stood in complete darkness. No walls, no floor, just the absence of things. Ahead of him a fire burned, low at first, controlled. Beyond it stood a shape, swaying gently side to side like it was rocking itself to sleep. With every sway the fire grew, but it didn't give off heat, it gave off cold. A bitter, needling cold that sank into his bones. The flames rose higher, swallowing everything. A sound followed, a shriek of metal on metal like something ancient being torn open. Then came a scream, not human, not animal, something in between, something wrong. John woke up gasping. The clock glowed 1:03 a.m. His heart hammered against his ribs like it wanted out. Sleep had abandoned him once again, and he knew better than to chase it. He pulled his jogging pants, slipped on shoes, and stepped into the night without telling himself where he was going. The air was cold and empty. The streets were dead in a way that felt intentional, like the town was holding its breath. John walked without hurry, past dark houses and silent intersections, until 2 miles later he found himself near the highway. He followed it. Another half mile and he slipped beneath an underpass, ducking into the shadows beneath the concrete span. He sat with his back against the cold pillar and waited. For the first time all night, his shoulders loosened. No one knew where he was. No one was looking for him. The thought felt good, dangerously good. Then it turned on him, souring into something sharp and lonely. That was the part John couldn't explain. He believed people needed connection, love, hate, conflict, indifference. As long as someone saw you, something mattered. The idea of not needing anyone at all terrified him. That was Garrison's true danger, that emptiness. The concrete began to tremble beneath him. Panic flashed hot and sudden in his chest, irrational and vivid, as if the ground itself might crack open. Then he saw it, a distant light cutting through the darkness above the tracks. A train. It rolled into view slowly, deliberately, like it had been coming for him all along. The rumble crept into his bones, into his skull, shaking loose thoughts he didn't want anymore. The noise grew. It swallowed memory. It drowned fear. For 3 minutes beneath the overpass, wrapped in still thunder and shadow, John Rohatat found peace. Not because the chaos stopped, but because, for once, it was louder than his mind. Chapter 10, The Shadow Squad, Part 1. Not sleeping? Lerner's voice came from behind him, light and amused. John hadn't even heard him come in. The rookie room, sometimes called the Rook Room, depending on who was tired enough to misread the sign, sat tucked into the back of the Borton City Police Department like an afterthought. Most days it hosted defensive driving classes, AA meetings, or officers too fried to go home just yet. Today it smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. "I'm good," John said, yawning without bothering to hide it. Lerner studied him for a beat. "The dreams?" He rolled a wheeled suitcase up to the desk and started unpacking. "I had them the first years too." John's eyebrow twitched upward. Unease slid in where humor usually lived. "It's not the one with the circus seal and the Eskimo, is it?" Lerner went on, pulling out folders like he was discussing weather. John stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or to ask questions he didn't want answered. With Lerner, jokes and confessions lived uncomfortably close together. The door opened again. 2 uniformed officers stepped in, both looking like they'd been awake since God changed shifts. The taller one's name read Barnes, though everyone called him Barney. The others read Ganan. Joe to his friends, Joey to family, and Go-Go Ganan when people wanted him annoyed. "Is this the Shadow Squad?" Barney asked. Lerner didn't answer. He went to the whiteboard and wrote carefully, "Homicide Operational Management Office." The 2 uniforms stared, then they started snickering. John frowned, glanced at them, then back at the board. It took a second, then it hit him. He clamped a hand over his mouth, coughing hard to hide the laugh clawing its way up his throat. "How'd you come up with that name, Detective?" John asked, voice tight with restraint. Lerner shrugged, returning to his suitcase. "Sounded better than the other ones." "So," John said, cracking open an energy drink, "where'd it come from?" "Skinner suggested it," Lerner said shortly. "And before you say it, I know it's not great, but remember, you make the name. The name doesn't make you." Joe lifted his head off the table, eyes glassy. "So what you're saying is..." He paused, fighting it. "We make the homo. The homo doesn't make us." That was it. Joe and Barney lost control completely. Laughter exploded out of them, sharp and ugly and desperately needed. John nearly joined them, shoulders shaking. "What?" Lerner asked, genuinely confused. John finally nodded towards the board. It took Lerner a few seconds, then realization hit. His shoulders sagged. "Shit," he muttered, erasing the board with unnecessary force. "So, when do we get our homo badges?" Barney called, still laughing. John turned away, wiping his eyes, nearly walked straight into a wall of rage. Dr. Abigail Kinsley stood inches from his face. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. They had once been close, too close for how things ended. She stepped back and jerked her head towards the hallway. John followed without argument. She shut the door behind him hard enough to make a point. "I'm surprised to see you here," John said, already regretting the sound of his own voice. "Well," Abby said tightly, "I'm surprised to be here." She crossed her arms. "What did you do?" The door cracked open. Lerner leaned out. "Doctor," he said politely, "can we finish this later?" Abby shot John one last look, sharp, disappointed, loaded, then turned to Lerner and smiled like a professional mask snapping into place. "Of course." They went back inside. Abby chose a seat far from John as possible. John sat down slowly, the humor drained out of him completely. He stared at the table, the energy drink sweating beside his hand. He knew Abby, and he knew exactly what kind of storm he just invited into the room. The Shadow Squad hadn't even started yet, and already it was personal. Chapter 11, Class Begins. Lerner began by handing out binders. They hit the tables with a dull, discouraging thud, 2 inches thick, 3-ringed, and heavy enough to bruise your foot if you dropped one. John had helped assemble them the night before, and even he felt a twinge of sympathy watching the others take them in. Joe stared down at his stack like it might start talking. "Didn't I graduate college so I wouldn't have to do shit like this anymore?" he said, flipping through the pages dense with timelines, photos, and notes that didn't bother easing anyone in. Barney leaned back in his chair, already exhausted. "Please tell me y'all made Cliff Notes." He squinted at the binder. "Or an audiobook? I'd even take interactive dance at this point." Lerner cleared his throat from the front of the room. "All right," he said. "If you weren't here until at least 10 p.m. last night arranging, organizing, and assembling those files, raise your hand." Abby's hand shot up immediately. She turned in her chair and looked at the two officers behind her. "Were either of you here yesterday?" "Nope," Barney said cheerfully. "Then raise your hands," Abby replied, tone flat as linoleum. Joe and Barney complied. John shook his head fast and lifted his palms like he was surrendering. "Nope, I was here until 10. I wrote half that." Abby arched an eyebrow and glanced at him again. Not friendly, but not hostile either. Something like recalibration. "All those with your hands in the air," Lerner said, smiling thinly, "will be spending the next few hours getting very well acquainted with the material." Joe groaned. "We'll reconvene after lunch," Lerner added. "Let's say 1:30. Barney flipped another page. "And where are you going?" "Well," Lerner corrected, snapping the latch on the suitcase, "we are taking a field trip." John followed him into the hallway without asking questions. Lerner didn't explain where they were headed, not as they walked, not as they stepped outside into the thin daylight, not even as John unlocked the car and slid into the driver's seat. It wasn't until John turned the key and the engine came to life that Lerner finally spoke. And whatever he said next made the binder back at the room feel very, very light by comparison. Chapter 12. Return to the point. John parked his car exactly where he had last time, right in front of the pawn shop. The sign still read "The Pawns." No glass, no lights, like it was daring someone to fix it. "Think Caden will be happy to see us?" Lerner said, grinning. John glanced at him. As usual, he couldn't tell if Lerner was joking. "Let's keep sudden movements to a minimum." Lerner laughed, and they stepped out of the car together, both men aware of how exposed they were. The street felt tighter than before, like it had closed ranks. The door buzzed. They let themselves in. "Well," Caden said, exhaling a long stream of smoke from the hookah between his legs. The thing was massive, 4 feet tall at least, and hissing softly like it was alive. "If it ain't little Piggy can't do." The air was thick with cinnamon and something harsher underneath. John's unease deepened with every step toward the counter. "You know my life's been hell since you two showed up," Caden said. "Should have left you for dead when I had the chance." He took another pull, eyes never leaving them. "I showed you the devil. You even gave him a name, so why's he still alive?" A sharp crack split the room. John flinched hard enough that his hand nearly went to his gun. The sound came from the front window. Gunfire. No glass shattered. No hole appeared. Just the echo. "Again?" Caden muttered, smiling without humor. "I really gotta thank you, Piggy can't do." Lerner leaned forward, palms on the counter. "How long's this been happening?" "Since I helped you two dipshits get out alive," Caden shouted. "Word got out I was friendly with outside cops. That's all it took. Enemies, allies, everyone suddenly agrees on one thing." Lerner hesitated. "Is there anything we can do to make it stop?" Caden laughed and choked on smoke, coughing hard before slamming the hookah hose down. "Yeah," he said. "Kill the motherfucker like you said you would." "Hold on," John said. "We never said kill exactly." "Kill him, arrest him, chop his head off," Caden snapped. "Skull fuck him if that helps. I don't care, just make him go away." John raised both hands. "If you show us the gray man right now, we'll make him disappear." "I already tried that," Caden said, shaking his head. His eyes were tired now, broken. "He's in the building." "The one with the big portrait?" Lerner asked. Caden barked a laugh. "No, dipshits, past that." His voice climbed. "You were supposed to keep going. Next block, other side." "We didn't know that," John said, forcing a laugh that fooled no one. "And we didn't know which building," Lerner added. Caden slammed his hand down on the counter. "It's the only one nobody's got the balls to tag. Ain't that detective enough for you?" The anger drained out of his face, then leaving something worse. Betrayal. John and Lerner found themselves backing toward the door without meaning to. "We'll get 'em," Lerner said quietly. "Don't give up yet." Caden didn't respond. He dropped back into his chair, smoke curling around him like curtains as they left. Outside, John exhaled hard. "I have no idea what just happened in there." "People think he's working with us," Lerner said as John started the engine. "That's a death sentence in the point. Unless they think he's helping us get rid of something worse." He paused. "If that were true, they'd be sending us thank you notes instead of bullets." They rolled forward slowly past the towering portrait of Garrison Green glaring down from the brick and paint. John didn't stop, didn't look too long. Past it, the street thinned out, smaller buildings, broken storefronts, then a building that didn't belong, a big solid, untouched, no graffiti, no tags, no markings at all. John stopped the car. Lerner reached for the door handle. John caught his wrist. "You sure?" John asked. "Could be Green. Could be a trap." "If Garrison Green's in there," Lerner said, stepping out, "then that's where we go." John followed reluctantly. "And if something happens, we've got no backup." Lerner didn't answer. He circled the building, peering into glassless windows like he was reading Braille. John pulled out his phone and called Mayor Moores. "You're where?" Moores shouted. "What the fuck are you doing there?" "We've got a lead," John said, watching Lerner examine a boarded window. "Green might be using a building as a hideout. What's the protocol for backup in the point?" Moores laughed, short and bitter. "Backup? In the point?" Then harder. "There is no backup, not like that." A pause. "How solid is this lead?" John weighed it against the emptiness of the street. "Pretty solid." "I'll make some calls," Moores said, "but listen to me, get your dumbasses out of there now. I'll call when I know more." The line went dead. John didn't argue. They got back in their car and drove. The building stayed behind them, silent and patient, as Author's Point swallowed the street again. They returned to Borton City, but the place they'd found had already made up its mind about them. Chapter 13. Back to class. John and Lerner returned to the Rook Room a little after 1. The room looked like it had aged a year in their absence. Officer Barnes sat slumped in his chair, eyes half-lidded, one hand propping up his head like it was in danger of rolling off his shoulders. The other rested on the thick green binder in front of him, fingers twitching occasionally as if the pages might bite. Officer Ganhan paced the back of the room with rock music blasting through his headphones, flipping pages as he walked. The sound leaked out in thin metallic screams. He looked wired, over-caffeinated, and exhausted all at once. Dr. Abigail Kinsley sat apart from them. Her binder was closed. She looked up from her notepad as John and Lerner entered. She finished the green file an hour ago. What she was writing now wasn't a summary, it was a profile. And she was furious. The anger didn't come out loud or rude. It sat just beneath her words, honed and sharp. "I'll be finished in 20 minutes, Abby said. "After that, I'm done here, right? I assume that's why you brought me down." Her eyes found John immediately. They stayed there. Lerner caught the look from John's face, guilt, regret, something dangerously close to shame, and stepped in before it could turn into something else. "I apologize, Dr. Kinsley," Lerner said. "Your presence will be required for the duration of the investigation. We don't expect you in the field. If you're uncomfortable here, we can arrange for you to work from your hotel and present once daily." "I'd be more comfortable at my home," Abby said coolly, "far away from all of this." I'm sorry, Lerner said again, already turning toward the board. That's not an option. He wrote in block letters, Arthur's Point. Finish reading later, gentlemen. Joe and Barney straightened immediately. John leaned against the table in front of Lerner, very deliberately avoiding Abby's stare. What's the point? Joe snickered. City slogan? No, Lerner said, but that does appear to be the general consensus outside the city. It's a shithole, Barney said bluntly. Lawless, corrupt war zone? It's ideal, Abby said calmly, cutting through him. A transient could live there indefinitely without drawing attention. Lerner nodded. Officer Rowantat and I have been pursuing a lead there. Old Town District. Barney laughed. Downtown Point? That's either courage or suicide. He's a boogeyman down there too, Abby said quietly. Lerner turned toward her, surprised. Yes, he said, very much so. Abby straightened. This was her element now. The anger sharpened into focus. If the enlistment records are correct, then Garrison service occurred during peacetime, she said, which makes the KIA notice questionable. She flipped through her notes. We know he's capable of total independence, food, shelter, entertainment, without reliance on modern systems. She looked up. Most repeat predators act on impulse, sexual, sadistic, emotional. There's no evidence of that here. No sexual assaults, no prolonged suffering. The wounds are deep, efficient. Death comes fast. She tapped the paper. These don't look like the crimes of desire. They look like crimes without feeling. She stood, energy rising. The Livingston boy, throat cut, body left in the open, no attempt to hide. Same with the lighthouse case. Dragged the victim a considerable distance, killed her and left her there. John frowned. Why move them at all? Abby met his eyes. The anger was gone now, replaced by something colder. I don't know, she said, but it mattered to him. Lerner raised a hand. I'm listening, I just don't see the connection. He's military, Abby said. Possible special forces. These resemble execution. Mission focused, the target is secondary. She hesitated. In grad school, a professor described off-the-books units used to destabilize regions, psychological warfare, fear operations. He called them Uncle Sam's secret terrorist. The room went quiet. They operated without support, Abby continued. Self-sustaining, disconnected. John swallowed. You think he's still operating? Yes, Abby said, in mission mode. Who's giving him orders? Joe asked. Abby shrugged. A hallucination, a memory, a voice. He has documented mental illness. Command authority doesn't have to be a real object to be obeyed. She took a drink of water. We won't know until we see him. Lerner stood in front of the room, the theory clicking into place like a bad lock finally turning. The door opened. Skinner Borton stepped in. He motioned Lerner into the hallway and closed the door behind them. The councilman didn't waste time. You're confident the point will produce something? Skinner said quietly. I am, Lerner replied. You need to be, Skinner said. I've put several careers on the line. He glanced at the paper in his hand. Arthur's Point has agreed to cooperate. Lerner stiffened. You will have an armored escort starting at 6:30 a.m. You leave by 5:30 p.m. Their mayor won't risk people after dark. His voice hardened. Dr. Kinsley will not go. Neither will the Port Nevers officers. Lerner bristled. You're cutting my team in half? The doctor doesn't belong down there, Skinner snapped, and those officers lack training. Their chief prefers them alive. He leaned closer. Unless you have a reason to endanger them. No, sir, Lerner said. Will we be allowed to remove evidence? You'll operate normally, Skinner said, but time is limited. And after tomorrow? Skinner smiled thinly. That depends on what you find. He left. Lerner returned to the room and delivered the orders. The reactions came in waves, frustration, excitement, fear, before he dismissed them. He left Abby in charge. John followed Lerner into the hallway. The detective said nothing, and for the first time, John saw it clearly. Lerner wasn't excited anymore. He was shaken. Chapter 14, Exodus. The Gentlemen's Club sat 2 miles outside Borton city limits, right where the pavement started to forget who paid for it. Technically, county land. Practically Borton's problem. The place had worn a dozen names over the years, each one peeled off and replaced when an owner ran out of luck or money. The current name glowed in tired red neon. Club Exodus. William Angst idea. Biblical flair for a place that sold Escape by the hour. Just after 7, the first dancer took the stage. Detective Lawson Lerner sat alone in the back corner at a small round table beside the bar. From there he could see the stage clearly, while the bar itself blocked him from the front door. Old habit. He checked the time and felt a pinch of irritation twist into something closer to disappointment. John still hadn't shown. "Here you go, Sonny," the waitress said, setting down his second Long Island iced tea. Everyone knew him. Outside the club, he was Detective Lawson Lerner. Inside, he was just Sonny, quiet, generous with tips, and polite enough not to leer. He kept this place separate from the rest of his life, or he had until today. Sonny knew he was nearing the end of his career. He could feel it in his bones, the way a man feels winter coming before the first frost. He had never married, never stayed long when things got hard. Now, in the dim glow of a strip club he pretended wasn't a metaphor, the loneliness crept in and stayed. Joe saved him from it. Joe grabbed a cheap beer and slid into the seat across from him. "Very cool," he said, taking in the room before draining half the bottle. Lerner's invitation had surprised him, but it also earned a point of respect. "Where's Barnes?" Sonny shouted over the music. "Home with his woman and kid," Joe said, rocking invisible arms. Sonny nodded. A place like this could complicate a marriage. Still, he was glad Joe had come. 2 fresh drinks appeared. For Sonny and friend, Sarah Redding stood over them smiling. She wore the club uniform, low-cut, tight, and practiced, but her smile was real. "Good evening, Sonny," she said with a playful bow. Joe stared openly. Sarah caught it, smiled wider, and turned to him, extending her hand. "Sarah." "Joe," he said, kissing it like it was a bad movie. She laughed and headed back to the bar. Joe watched her go like she had taken something with her. Very cool. They talked over the music. Dancers came and went. The lights pulsed. An hour slipped past. Sonny finally accepted that John wasn't coming. For 15 minutes, Sonny let himself disappear into it. The lights, the movement, the predictable rhythms of bodies and noise. It soothed him. No dead children, no Garrison Green, no task force that might end his career. For a few minutes, retirement didn't scare him. John sat down beside him without a sound. "Earth to Detective Lerner," John said, snapping his fingers. Sonny blinked, smiled. "Just Sonny here, John. Glad you made it." "No one else?" John asked, glancing around. "Thought the dynamic duo would be here." Sonny pointed toward the corner. Joe was mid-private dance, grinning like he'd won something. John laughed. Is that Sarah from the cafe?" Sonny nodded, watching John carefully. "So," Sonny said, tapping his glass, "what'll it be?" "Oh, hell no," John said. "I haven't had a drink since freshman year." Sonny leaned closer, voice low. "Tomorrow morning we'll be walking into his world." He paused, choosing his words. "Tomorrow we walk into hell." John studied him, then nodded. "Give me whatever you got." The song ended. Sonny ordered another round. Joe returned, glowing. He searched for a word and failed. "That was fucking cool." Sarah brought the drinks, carefully avoiding John's eyes. "This is..." "Detective," Joe started. Just John, John cut in. John, Joe repeated, pointing between them. Not Joe. Sarah smiled and patted John's head. I'm sure I won't mix you up. John drank and coughed hard, remembering why he'd stopped drinking. Joe slapped his back and wandered off. I think he's drunk, Sonny said, slurring slightly. I'm buzzed, not drunk. John studied him. You okay? Sonny sobered fast. If we don't catch Green, I'm done, he said quietly. And if we do, I think they'll retire me. John wanted to disagree. He didn't. Maybe I lost it, Sonny said, laughing without humor. Chasing shadows too long. They watched the stage in silence. The DJ's voice boomed, and now, Little Red Riding Hood. Sarah stepped onto the stage in a red cloak. John felt something loosen in his chest. He finished his drink without realizing it. When the dance ended, he wanted it to keep going. Sarah returned with more drinks. Close me out, Sonny said. She noticed John hesitating. You don't have to drink it, she said gently. I will. John slid it toward her. She sat beside him. I'm glad you came out tonight, she said. How many jobs you got? John asked. The cafe keeps my dad happy, she said. This pays the bills. She leaned closer. I could give you a private dance. I won't touch you, she said softly. You look like you need a distraction. John hesitated, then shook his head. She smiled, drained the drink, and walked away. Panic flickered. Where's Joe? John checked the bathrooms, dread climbing. When he opened the last stall, someone screamed at him. He fled back out to find Sonny waiting. Joe puked on himself, Sonny said. He's home safe. Big day tomorrow. Get some sleep. Sonny disappeared into the parking lot. John stood alone under the stars, then drove home thinking of Sarah the whole way. That night, he slept like a man who didn't know what the morning was bringing.